Hello and welcome to your screencast for Personal and Professional Development 2. This is your second screencast. Last one we looked at how to copy and submit something to the workspace. This time I just thought we'd have a little bit and a think about the structure of the assignment. So you're going to be doing this with Kat as well on Thursday, but this is just a follow on from that. So if you go to Assets, I'll just pull up my HCPC statement. So your first page is just looking at a summary of your recent work experiences, work practices and work experience. So if I was writing this, I'd write it similar to how I would write a CV. So I would write job roles that I've had relevant to your OT degree and the dates and the times of where you were there, and also some of the job roles that needed as part of that role. Then we'll go into your standards. So these are standards that we've taken from the Healthcare Professions Council, and these are standards that as occupational therapists and health professionals as a whole, we have to meet these standards in order to maintain our registration. And what happens when you're trained is that you'll be picked randomly. Somebody's picked randomly and you have to then provide evidence against these standards. So we're asking you to do this as it's going to be a useful tool to use, obviously, when you graduate. But it's also starting to make you think about what are the standards you need to be aspiring to. So the first one is a registrant must maintain continuous and up-to-date record of CPD activity. So you can think about training that you've done, lectures that you've attended. It might be a specific session or lecture that you've attended that you've then gone away and reflected on. And just make a note of this and link it. You might want to link it to assets, maybe reflections around that specific CPD activity. So what's quite different about this assignment is you have to sort of weave in the learning outcomes alongside the standards. So your learning outcomes are identify and explain the transferable skills of an occupational therapist and reflect on their application in different settings, and examine and reflect on the influences that you have on those around you, and articulating your role as an occupational therapist. So you want to think of examples that meet that standard of showing CPD activity but also linking in your learning outcomes. So we did do a session on transferable skills and then we did a skills audit, so you might want to discuss that activity that we did and any reflections from that. Thinking about reflecting an influence that you have on those around you, you might want to reflect or think about some feedback that you've had, maybe on placement, or maybe when you've worked in groups, maybe in interprofessional education. And articulating your role as an OT to a wider audience. I'm sure you'll have had to do that on your extended scope placement. You might have had to do it in IPE week as well. So there's lots of things you could think about under that. Standard 2, a registrant must identify that their CPD activities are a mixture of learning activities relevant to current or future practice. So what you want to think about there is all the different things that they've done, and then think about it more about actually how it's impacted on you as a practicing clinician. And again, you're thinking about all your learning outcomes in there. So think of practically how these CPD activities have impacted on your current or future practice. Standard 3, you must seek to ensure that your CPD has contributed to the quality of your practice and service delivery. So think about things that you might have done that's actually made you change or alter your practice to enhance the quality. It might be that you've done something that hasn't quite worked out, that then you've gone back and done it differently. And standard 4, show that your CPD has benefited the service user. So I'm sure there's lots of examples on placement where you've done some fantastic intervention that's had a positive impact. It doesn't have to be anything groundbreaking. It could be a one-on-one activity. You may have just encouraged or helped someone to wash independently, or encouraged or helped someone to be able to get back to a hobby or interest that they've not done before. And also you're all doing your extended scope placement at the minute, where you've got to think of an intervention. It might be that you want to reflect on that. So there should be lots of things that you can think about. And it'd be really great there, if you can, whilst you're out on placement, is to actually get some service user feedback maybe on the benefits that they've had for your CPD. So that's it really. I think the thing that people have found most difficult is trying to weave in the learning outcomes alongside the standards. Can find that quite confusing. So what I would do is, once I've written the assignment, is I would maybe go back to it and copy and paste it into a Word document and print it out, or leave it, or however you prefer to work. And I would actually highlight where I've linked it to learning outcomes and make sure I've got a balance of them all. So the other thing I just want to I've shown you this before, but just remind you about, because there's lots of really good things on there, is the resources through Atlas. So if you go into Atlas and then onto resources, there's loads of stuff there that you can look at. So there's exemplar assignments, and there's also things we've taken from the HCPC website. So if you look here, there's a list of examples of evidence, and that's really useful, because sometimes you can get a bit lost and you think, oh, well, all I'm doing is reflections. So there's lots of things there. They list all the different things that you might want to use as evidence. And I think you did a lot of work with Jude on that. And then just lastly, just to say, please also use the discussion board. Created a discussion board called Assignment Support, and please use that, because that's another good way of answering any queries or worries. And I will actually be doing a live discussion board next Wednesday at 7:15. So that's Wednesday the 18th, for that sort of immediate collaborative response. So you can, it's up to you whether you access that. There's no expectation that people do. It's just there as an extra top up for assignment support. So good luck with the assignment, and don't forget you can use the discussion board, and use each other as well. Get peer support. Hope that's been useful. Thank you.